Rain slammed against the underground tram station like fists against a locked door. Midnight had crawled past, leaving the city empty except for the fluorescent hum of lights flickering above the tracks. Amara Chukwu stood at the platform's edge, toes almost hanging over the warning line. Her hands trembled inside the sleeves of her thin hoodie, and her breath fogged in the cold air as she stared down at the tracks. One step would end the ache. One step would silence the loneliness clawing at her since her father died and her mother vanished years ago. She whispered, barely audible, "Just one more second." The words mixed with the rain. Then the quiet shattered. Tires screeched at the entrance of the station. Engines rumbled. Dark figures rushed in with weapons drawn. Amara blinked, confused, pulling back from the edge. Before she could fully turn, a gunshot cracked through the air. Something burned through her abdomen, fierce and hot. The world spun as her body slammed onto the slick floor. Her scream drowned beneath the ringing in her ears. "This isn't the target!" a man yelled in Korean, another voice colder, steadier. "Who is she? Check her!" Boots splashed toward her. Hands roughly turned her face up. Faces blurred above her as the rain mixed with her blood. "She's nobody, boss. Wrong woman. Should we leave her?" A figure stepped forward, his silhouette sharp against the lights, broad shoulders, long coat, presence radiating danger. Kang Ryuseok crouched beside her, studying her with unreadable eyes. His expression was carved from stone. Amara coughed blood. Please just leave me." "She's bleeding out," someone said. Ryusok's jaw tightened. "No loose ends." He lifted her with surprising care. "Bring the car. Now." Her vision flickered. The last thing she saw before passing out was his face, unblinking, watching her like she was a puzzle he didn't ask for but now had to solve. The world returned slowly, like rising from underwater. A soft beeping, the scent of antiseptic, a warm blanket on her legs. Amara blinked, disoriented. The room wasn't a hospital. It looked too expensive. Silk-textured walls, dim lights, a polished floor. Medical machines hummed quietly beside her bed. A man sat across from her, assembling a gun piece by piece with practiced precision. Ryusok. His presence filled the room before he even spoke. "You're awake." Amara's throat felt scraped raw. Where am I?" "Somewhere safe." Click. A magazine slid into place. "Somewhere private. Somewhere you can't leave yet." Fear tightened her chest. She tried to shift, but pain throbbed where the bullet had ripped through her. "You shot me." "My men shot you," he corrected, finally looking up. His eyes were dark and still, like deep water. "A mistake." "Then let me go," she croaked. "No." He leaned back. "I don't release unknown variables. Not until I know what you are." "What Amara stared at him in disbelief. "I was about to jump. I wasn't part of whatever you were doing." Ryusok studied her quietly, observing every trembling breath. "Why were you there at that hour?" "None of your business." "Everything about you is my business," he replied calmly, "especially when you take a bullet meant for someone else." A soft knock sounded. A tall man with glasses entered, handing Ryusok a tablet. He left silently, not sparing Amara a second glance. Ryusok scrolled, his face unreadable. Amara Chukwu, 26, Nigerian, graduate scholarship in Seoul, father deceased, mother missing, few friends, no social media activity for months, no ties to crime. He looked up. "So why were you at a deserted station past midnight?" "Because," she whispered, "I didn't want to be here anymore." Something flickered in his eyes, something she couldn't name. He set the tablet down slowly. "Show me your phone. It's gone." "Jiho took it," he said. "We'll see everything on it soon anyway." Amara shut her eyes. Her life wasn't supposed to end like this. Shot, kidnapped, interrogated by a Mafia leader. The universe had a sick sense of humor. Ryusok stood. "You'll stay here until I decide otherwise. Meals in 3 hours, medication in 1. He paused at the door. "And Amara." His voice dropped. "Don't try anything foolish. You won't make it past the hallway." He left. The door locked with a heavy click. Alone, Amara exhaled shakily. She should scream, fight, beg, but exhaustion weighed like wet sand on her bones. Minutes passed, maybe hours, before the door opened again. A giant of a man stepped in carrying a tray. He looked Taiwanese, tattoos peeking from his collar, but his movements were surprisingly gentle as he set the tray on the bed. "Eat," he said simply. Amara forced herself to sit up. "What is this place?" The man didn't answer. He just adjusted her pillow carefully, nodded once, and left. Amara stared at the food, her stomach twisted, not from hunger, but from fear. The next day followed a rhythm she didn't choose. A quiet doctor checked her wound. Another guard changed the sheets. A young hacker, Liu Zhen, dropped off a small stack of sketch paper because the boss said so. She didn't touch it at first, but as hours stretched thin, she picked up a pencil and sketched the small, windowless room. It kept her sane. The door opened. Ryusok stepped in, wearing a black shirt and the same unreadable expression. He paused when he saw the drawing. "You draw." She didn't answer. He approached, looking at her sketch. "Interesting that you captured every detail but left out yourself." "Why would I draw myself? I don't matter." "That," he said, "is incorrect." She kept sketching to avoid his stare, but Ryusok studied her like he was learning a new language. "Why didn't you scream?" he asked suddenly. "When?" "When I picked you up off the tracks." Amara hesitated. "I didn't think it mattered if I lived or died." For the first time, something softened in his face, so subtle she almost missed it. Then he stepped back, voice cold again. "You matter now because your existence complicates mine." A shout echoed somewhere in the facility. Ryusok stiffened. Amara's heart raced. "What was that?" Before he could answer, the lights flickered. Alarms blared. Gunshots rang out, closer than before. Ryusok grabbed her wrist. "Move! Wait, what's happening?" "Sayonari found you." His voice was low, controlled, deadly. "And she wants you dead." He dragged her down the hallway as bullets tore into the walls. Guards returned fire. Amara stumbled, terrified, her wound aching with every step. A masked man appeared at the corridor's end and lunged. Ryusok shoved Amara behind him. 2 shots. The man fell. "Stay with me," Ryusok ordered. I am." They reached a reinforced door. He pushed her inside. "If they get through, you hide under the steel desk. You don't speak. You don't breathe loud. Do you understand?" Amara nodded, trembling. Ryusok touched her cheek for one brief, strange moment, an anchor in the chaos. Then he left, locking her inside. Amara pressed her ear to the door. Gunfire erupted. Shouts. Something exploded in the distance. Her heartbeat pounded louder than the alarms. Minutes dragged by. Then silence. A knock. "Amara, it's me." Her breath caught. "Prove it." "You sketch the world as you want it, not as it is," Ryusok said through the door. "Even your windowless room has sunlight on paper." She unlocked the door. Ryusok stood bleeding, shirt torn, knuckles split, but alive. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No. Are you?" "I've had worse." She stepped to him, hands trembling, reaching for his injuries. Ryusok caught her wrists gently, watching her with an intensity that made her breath stall. "Why do you care?" he whispered. "I don't know." The distance between them vanished. Their mouths crashed together, fierce, desperate, the taste of adrenaline and fear mixing between them. She didn't know who leaned in first. She only knew she needed him in that moment. Ryusok pulled away first, breathing hard. "This changes nothing," he said, voice shaking ever so slightly. "You're still not free." Amara's voice broke. "I know, but you're alive." His thumb brushed her cheek. "And I'll keep you that way." Before leaving, he added quietly, "If you're listening to this story, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next chapter." He closed the door behind him. Amara touched her lips, still trembling, knowing her life had just become far more complicated. Sleep didn't come for Amara that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the gunshots again, the shattering glass, the echo of footsteps running toward her, the way Ryusok's body shielded hers without hesitation, the memory of his scent, his breath against her lips, the brief but undeniable tenderness in a man who should have been incapable of it. None of it left her. She sat awake in the dim room, legs pulled to her chest, staring at the door as though it might open again and drag her into another war. Every few minutes, she checked the hallway through the little grated window. Guards moved like shadows, alert, silent, reinforcing security. Something serious was happening. When morning finally came, she opened her eyes just in time to see Jiho enter with a new tray of breakfast. He placed it on the table without a glance at her. He always looked like a quiet storm, calm on the outside, violent on the inside. "Is he okay?" Amara asked. Jiho didn't respond. "Jiho," she pressed, voice tight, "is Ryusok alive?" He paused, his back to her. "He's alive." "Is he hurt?" "Always." The cryptic answer chilled her. Before she could ask more, he exited the room and locked the door behind him, leaving her alone with questions she didn't know how to answer. Hours later, Ryusok finally appeared. He wore a fresh suit, hair slightly wet as if he'd just showered. A few faint bruises marked his jaw, but otherwise he looked composed, too composed, like nothing had happened. "You look better than last night," Amara said before she could stop herself. Ryusok studied her for a long moment. "Get dressed." "For what?" "Evaluation." Her pulse spiked. "Am I being interrogated again?" "No." His eyes swept over her face, lingering with an intensity that made her heart stumble. "I want to know if you can walk." "Why?" "Because if Nari sends her people again, I'm not carrying you twice." He opened the closet. Inside were several outfits neatly arranged: sweaters, loose dresses, simple clothes that didn't scream luxury, but were clearly high quality. When she didn't move, he turned to face her fully. "I'm giving you choices," he said softly. "Not freedom, not yet, but choices." It startled her. Choices. It had been a long time since she'd had any. She picked a dark blue sweater and black pants. He turned his back while she changed, and when she finished, he simply nodded and motioned her to follow. Walking through the underground compound was like stepping through the veins of a beast. Guards were everywhere. Secret doors, coded locks, hallways that twisted and turned until Amara lost all sense of direction. She stayed close to Ryusok, partly because she didn't want to get shot by accident, partly because his presence, dangerous as it was, felt oddly grounding. They entered what looked like a training room. Mats covered the floor, weapons lined one wall, a punching bag hung heavily from the ceiling. Ryusok gestured for her to stand in the center. "Show me your balance," he said. "I'm not a soldier." "You don't have to be, but if you collapse while running, you'll die. Lift your arms." She obeyed. He stepped closer, his hands hovering near her waist but not touching. "Walk toward me." She took a step, wincing slightly, then another, then a third. "Good," he murmured. Again. Amara repeated the motion until the pain dulled. When she finally looked up, his eyes softened the slightest bit, a softness that made her chest tighten in confusion. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "You were shot because of me." "That doesn't mean you owe me anything." "It means you're in my world now," he replied, "and my world does not forgive weakness." She swallowed hard. "I don't want to be in your world." "Neither did I," he said quietly. Before she could respond, Dante walked in with his massive frame and a tiny cup of tea. "Boss, camera feeds show movement on the east fence. Could be stray kids, could be scouts." Ryusok's jaw clenched. "Double the patrol." Dante nodded and glanced at Amara. "You good?" "Trying," she said. "That's enough. Trying keeps you alive." He winked before leaving, easing the tension in her chest for a moment. Ryusok gestured to the nearest bench. "Sit." Amara obeyed. He knelt in front of her, rolled up her pant leg slightly, and inspected the stitched wound with his fingertips. The touch was impersonal, yet somehow gentle. "You're healing faster than expected," he said. "Thank the doctor." "I thank him when his work is exceptional," Ryusok replied, brushing a strand of hair behind his ear. "This is acceptable." Amara rolled her eyes before she could stop herself. "Do you ever compliment anyone?" He tilted his head, studying her. "I compliment people who don't lie." "I haven't lied." "You haven't told me everything." She stiffened. "What else do you want to know?" Ryusok didn't answer. He stood, voice turning cool again. "There will be another evaluation tomorrow. For now, rest." She wanted to protest, but exhaustion pulled her body down. As he escorted her back to her room, he paused before opening the door. "Amara." His voice dropped. Don't be afraid to ask for help, even from me. She swallowed, surprised. I didn't think you cared. I don't, he said too quickly, but your survival affects my plans. And then he left her inside. Night fell once more. Amara lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Ryusok's touch, his voice, his stare, they lingered like fingerprints on her soul. She didn't know what was happening between them or why her heart beat differently whenever he was near. She didn't want to feel anything for him. He was dangerous, fearsome, unpredictable. But he had also protected her, touched her gently, kissed her like she was the only anchor he had in the storm. She wrapped her arms around herself. Don't fall for him. Don't be stupid. Still, her lips tingled at the memory. The next morning came with a knock. It wasn't Jiho. It wasn't Dante. It was a woman, petite, with soft brown eyes and a simple maid uniform. She carried a tray and bowed slightly. Good morning, Miss Amara. Amara blinked. I haven't seen you before. I'm new, the woman said with a calm voice. My name is Han Yura. Yura's eyes lingered on Amara a second too long, and something strange flickered in them, a familiarity Amara couldn't place. But before she could ask, Yura lowered her head and left quickly. Amara stared after her. Why did she feel like she had seen that face before? Later that afternoon, Ryusok entered again. This time, he held something behind his back. I have something for you. What? He pulled out a sleek black phone and held it toward her. Under surveillance, no calls outside the network, no internet access except what I allow, but you can record messages, journal, sketch digitally. Why give me this? Amara asked, suspicious. Because you're alone here, he said simply, and solitude breaks people faster than bullets. The vulnerability of the statement cut through her defenses. She reached for the phone, but he tightened his hold slightly, so she had to look him in the eyes first. I'm trusting you, he murmured. Amara wondered if he realized how rare those words were for him, or how much her heart stumbled hearing them. I won't betray you, she whispered before she could stop herself. His expression shifted. Just barely. Good. She sat on the bed, scrolling through the blank phone pages, feeling strange warmth spread through her chest. Trust. It was a dangerous thing to build between a captor and a captive, yet it grew anyway. Hours passed quietly. Then, without warning, the facility shook. A blast. The lights flickered. Sirens wailed. Amara's breath seized. Not again. Not another attack. The hallway erupted with shouts. Boots thundered past her room. She pressed her hands to her ears, fear flooding her veins like fire. The door burst open. Ryusok stood there, breathing hard, eyes sharp with urgency. We're under attack. Stay behind me. Before she could even respond, he grabbed her hand, warm, strong, and pulled her into the corridor. His grip tightened as the walls shook with another explosion. Amara stumbled, and he caught her by the waist, bringing her close. Don't let go, he growled. I won't! And if you're watching this story, his voice rumbled as he shielded her from falling debris, hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. They raced into the chaos together. Smoke drifted through the hallway like a living thing, curling along the ceiling as alarms screamed overhead. Amara could barely hear her own heartbeat over the chaos, but Ryusok's grip on her hand anchored her, guiding her through the maze of flashing lights and shouting guards. They moved fast, Ryusok's pace unhesitating, precise, as if he'd memorized every possible escape path long before the danger ever reached them. Dante emerged from a side corridor, rifle slung across his chest. Boss, intruders breached the north corridor. We neutralized 3, but 2 escaped into the service tunnels. Block off the west wing, Ryusok ordered, not slowing, and secure the control room. Dante nodded, but his eyes flicked toward Amara. You okay? She's fine, Ryusok answered before she could speak, his tone brooking no contradiction. Amara barely had time to process the exchange. A sudden boom shook the floor beneath their feet, causing the lights to flicker. Ryusok pulled her close, shielding her with his body as fragments of ceiling plaster fell around them. Her breath hitched. Is this Nari again? Yes. His hand slid from hers to her waist, steadying her. She's testing my defenses, trying to find a hole. Why? Why does she want me? Ryusok hesitated. Because she thinks you matter to me. Amara froze. Do I? His jaw tightened. Move. It wasn't an answer. Or maybe it was. They rushed down a narrow passage toward a steel door Dante had just unlocked. Ryusok shoved her inside, then followed and locked the door behind them. The room looked like a surveillance chamber. Screens lined the walls, each showing different sections of the compound. Jiho stood in front of the central console, typing furiously. "We're containing the breach," Jiho said without turning. "There were 6 attackers total, 2 captured, 2 dead, 2 unaccounted for." Ryusok scanned the screens. "Find them." Jiho's fingers flew across the keys. "Working on it." Amara moved closer to Ryusok, unable to stop herself. His presence calmed her, even when everything around them felt like it was falling apart. She watched one of the screens flicker to a hallway she recognized, the one near her room. A lone figure moved through the shadows. "That's one," Jiho said. The second attacker appeared near a supply closet. Guns were raised, shots fired. The intruder dropped. The last one, however... "There," Jiho said sharply. "South stairwell. He's heading for the central wing." Ryusok cursed under his breath and grabbed a sidearm from the table. "He's going for her." Amara stiffened. "Me?" "You're the only unknown in this compound," Ryusok said, checking the weapon. "You're the only thing he doesn't understand." She backed up. "Then why not let me leave? I'm a liability." "You're a liability," he said, stepping toward her, "that I'm not willing to give up." The words hung between them, heavy, intimate, dangerous. Dante's voice crackled through the intercom. "Boss, we've got him cornered in the stairwell. Need backup." Ryusok turned to Amara. "Stay here." "No," she said before thinking. "I won't be locked in a room again, not while you're out there fighting for your life." He stared at her, breathing hard. "You're not ready. I can run, I can listen, and I won't slow you down." Jiho glanced between them. "Boss, make a decision. He's getting closer." Ryusok grabbed Amara's hand. "Stay behind me. You obey every command. No arguments, no questions." "I will. And if I say run, I run." "Good." His fingers squeezed hers once, hard. "Let's go." They burst into the hallway. Smoke stung Amara's eyes, but she stayed right behind him. The stairwell door was cracked open, the hinge bent. Ryusok raised his gun, signaling her to stay back. He slipped inside silently. Amara pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering. Voices echoed from below. "You're supposed to bring her alive," one man hissed. "Nari wants her unharmed." "Ryusok's got her locked down," another spat. "How do we get close?" "Find someone she trusts. A maid, a guard, someone who can get near her." Amara froze. Someone she trusts? Her mind flicked to the new maid, Yura, the way she'd stared at her. Too long. Ryusok's voice cut through the air. "You're not touching her!" The intruders spun. Gunfire erupted. "Stay down!" Ryusok shouted. Amara ducked behind the wall as bullets ricocheted, plaster spraying into the air. Dante and Jiho arrived seconds later, engaging the intruders from 2 sides. The firefight was quick, brutal. One attacker fell instantly. The second reached for a grenade. Dante tackled him before he could pull the pin. Silence settled. Ryusok strode down the stairs, grabbed the remaining intruder by the collar, and slammed him against the wall. "Who sent you specifically?" he demanded. "Nari," the man gasped. She said the girl isn't random. She said she's important to you." Ryusok's jaw locked. "She's wrong. Amara is not a target. She's my responsibility." The man laughed weakly. "Same thing." Ryusok shot him once in the leg, silencing him with a scream. "Take him for interrogation," he told Dante. Then he turned to Amara. She expected anger, frustration, coldness. Instead, he touched her face, gently, like his hands were afraid to hurt her. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No." "You listen well. You stayed hidden. You didn't panic." "I was scared," she whispered. "So was I." The admission slipped out before he could stop it. Her breath caught. Ryusok rarely revealed anything. Vulnerability was not a language he spoke. He stepped back quickly, clearing his throat. "Come, we're returning to your room." When they got back, he locked the door, then leaned against it, breathing slowly. "You okay?" she asked softly. "No." His voice was faintly shaking. "Because I'm realizing something." "Realizing what?" Ryusok walked to her, stopping so close she felt the heat of his breath. "You are becoming the one thing I can't lose." Her chest tightened painfully. Ryusok. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he said, brushing his knuckles along her cheek. You weren't supposed to matter. Maybe, she whispered. I wasn't supposed to die that night either. He exhaled sharply, eyes locked on hers. You living changed everything. Amara's hand rose without permission, gently touching the side of his bruised jaw. His breath hitched. For a moment, he leaned into the touch, as if her hand was a place he wanted to rest in. Then he stepped back, swallowing hard. Rest. I need to meet with Jiho. He moved toward the door, hesitated, then turned. And Amara. If you're listening to this story, make sure you subscribe. You'll want to know what happens next. The door closed behind him. Alone again, Amara sank onto the bed, mind spinning. His words echoed through her. You're becoming the one thing I can't lose. She touched her lips. She touched her heart. She knew she wasn't supposed to feel anything for him, but she did, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. The compound finally quieted as night pressed in, but Amara couldn't shake the unease twisting in her stomach. Every sound seemed sharper now, the hum of the ventilation, footsteps passing in the hall, the faint echo of distant doors opening and closing. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying Ryusok's words over and over. You're becoming the one thing I can't lose. People like him didn't say things like that. They didn't feel things like that, yet he'd said it. Not in anger, not in fear, but with a raw honesty that haunted her. A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. Before she could respond, the door cracked open and Yura stepped inside, carrying a tray of warm tea. Miss Amara, she whispered. You couldn't sleep. Amara blinked, startled. How did you know? Yura's eyes softened. Your light has been on for hours. I thought tea might help. Amara sat up slowly. Yura placed the cup beside her and began straightening the room with quiet familiarity, her movements gentle, almost maternal. It was comforting in a way Amara hadn't felt in years. You're very kind, Amara said. Yura hesitated slightly before speaking. You remind me of someone. Someone you knew? Someone I lost. Something flickered in her voice. Grief, emptiness, a story buried under silence. Amara watched her more closely now, noticing a faint scar near her hairline, the tremor in her hands, the way she kept glancing at Amara like she was searching for something in her face. Yura, Amara's brows knitted. Have we met before? Yura froze. Her lips parted, but before she could answer, footsteps approached. She immediately bowed and slipped out of the room. The door shut. Ryusok entered a moment later, frowning. Why was the door open? I was just talking to Yura. His expression darkened immediately. Don't speak to her alone. Why? Amara asked, startled. She's harmless. No one in my world is harmless, he said sharply. Especially not the ones who pretend to be. Amara bristled. You're being paranoid. Ryusok stepped closer, voice low. If I was paranoid, you'd have died in the last attack. She swallowed. He wasn't wrong. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. The walls have ears, Amara, and until I know who betrayed us earlier, I trust no one except Jiho, Dante, and unwillingly you. I didn't ask for your trust. No, he said, eyes softening for a second. But you earned it anyway. A strange warmth settled in her chest, but she pushed it aside. Why are you here? Ryusok's tone shifted, more controlled, more businesslike. Nari reached out. Amara tensed. What does she want? A negotiation. He crossed his arms. She says the attacks will stop if I hand you over. Amara felt the blood drain from her face. Hand me over? To what end? She claims she only wants to talk. His voice held a bitter edge. Nari doesn't talk. She tortures. Amara's throat tightened. So what are you going to do? Meet her, he said, and shut her down. By giving her what she wants? Her voice cracked. No. Ryusok stepped forward, his presence suddenly overwhelming. I'm not giving you to her, not for anything. Her breath caught. The intensity in his eyes was almost too much. He reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek she hadn't noticed falling. Why would she want me? Amara whispered. I'm nobody. You're not nobody, he snapped, anger masking emotion. You're in this now. You saw too much, you survived too much, and Nari thinks you matter to me." "And do I?" she asked quietly. Silence. Ryusok's jaw clenched. His eyes flickered between restraint and something deeper, something dangerous. He turned away. "I need to prepare for tomorrow," he said tightly. "Try to sleep." He reached the door, but paused just before exiting. "And Amara?" His voice lowered to something almost vulnerable. "Stay alive. I don't want to come back to find you gone." The door closed behind him. Amara stared at it long after he left. She couldn't decide what terrified her more, the enemies outside the compound or the feelings she was starting to have for the man who was supposed to be her captor. Morning came swiftly. Jiho escorted her to a room she'd never seen before, one with mirrored walls and a single chair. She sat while the doctor checked her wound. "You're strong," the doctor murmured. "Most people wouldn't have healed this quickly." "Maybe I'm not most people." The doctor chuckled lightly. "Ryusok will be pleased." She didn't know how to feel about that. When she returned to her room, Ryusok was waiting. He wore a dark suit, coat draped over his shoulder, hair slicked back. He looked like a man preparing for war, not a meeting. "You're leaving," she whispered. "Yes." "And you're going to see her." "Yes." She hesitated. "Will you come back?" His eyes locked on hers. "I always come back." It was an answer wrapped in promise and danger. He stepped closer, lifting her chin gently. "I don't know how she'll respond. I don't know what she'll demand, but I won't let her touch you." "She wants me dead." "She won't get you," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." Amara swallowed the panic rising in her chest. "Are you sure you can trust your men?" His gaze sharpened. "Why do you ask?" "Because someone let the last attackers in." Ryusok's expression shifted. "Did you notice something?" "Maybe." She hesitated. "It might be nothing." "Nothing doesn't breach my compound," he said. "Tell me." Amara thought of Yura, the familiar eyes, the strange tension, but something inside her resisted speaking the name. "Let me think more on it," she said. "I don't want to accuse the wrong person." Ryusok studied her, searching her expression. After a moment, he nodded. "I trust your judgment." He stepped toward the door. Amara grabbed his arm before she realized what she was doing. "Ryusok, be careful." He froze. Slowly he turned, his face unreadable. But his eyes burned. He leaned in, pressed his forehead against hers, and exhaled shakily. "If something happens to me..." His voice cracked. "Remember that meeting you on that station, saving you? It wasn't a mistake. It was the only right thing I've done in years." Amara felt her heart twist painfully. "Don't talk like that." He pulled away slightly, brushing his thumb across her cheek. "If you're listening to this story," he murmured softly, "subscribe. It keeps stories like this alive." And then he left, the door clicking shut behind him. Hours passed. Amara paced her room, staring at the door, waiting for it to open again. Every minute felt heavier, slower. She checked the time again and again, counting the seconds. Then, finally, the door burst open. But it wasn't Ryusok. It was Jiho, breathless. "Pack your things," he said urgently. "We need to move you, now." Amara's heart dropped. "What happened?" Jiho's eyes darkened. "The negotiation didn't go as planned." "Is he..." Her voice broke. "Is Ryusok hurt?" Jiho's silence was enough to send her knees trembling. He grabbed her arm gently. "We don't have time. They're coming." "Who?" "Everyone." Jiho pulled her toward the hallway, but just as they reached the first corner, a familiar voice called her name. "Amara." She turned. Yura stood at the end of the hall, eyes wide, face pale, hands trembling. Something about her expression, fear, relief, recognition, made Amara's breath stop. Jiho raised his gun instantly. "Stay back." Yura held up her hands. "Please, I need to speak to her. Just her." "No," Jiho snapped. "Not happening." Yura's voice cracked. "She deserves to know the truth." Amara's throat tightened. "What truth?" Tears filled Yura's eyes. Her voice shook. "I know who you are," she whispered, "and I know why Nari wants you." Amara froze. Jiho cursed under his breath. "We need to go, now." But Amara couldn't move, not until she heard what the woman had to say. Yura took a step forward, tears spilling down her cheeks. Amara, her voice broke. I'm your mother. For a long moment, the world simply stopped. Amara's breath caught in her throat as she stared at Yura, at the trembling hands, the familiar softness in her eyes, the scar she suddenly recognized from childhood memories she had tried so hard to bury, a scar from a market fire years ago, a scar her mother had carried. No? Amara whispered, backing up slowly. No, that's not possible. My mother died. They told me she died. I didn't die, Yura sobbed, taking a shaky step forward. I was taken. I was trafficked. I lost everything, except the memory of your face. Jiho stepped between them immediately, gun raised. Boss said no contact, back away. Yura's voice cracked. Please, just let me speak to my daughter. The word daughter hit Amara's chest like a blow. Tears burned at the edges of her vision, but her body was frozen, mind caught in a rapid clash of disbelief and desperate hope. Jiho? Amara whispered. Let her talk. Jiho shook his head. No, she could be an infiltrator. Or worse. I'm not, Yura cried. Ryusok found out months ago. He hired me quietly. He said he didn't want to upset Amara until she was stable. He wanted to protect her. Amara's world teetered. Ryusok knew? Yura nodded slowly. He promised he would keep us apart until you were safe. He didn't want to overwhelm you. Jiho's expression faltered. That doesn't sound like him. It does, Amara whispered, realization hitting her. He's been trying to protect me. From everything. The walls seemed to pulse with pressure, as if the entire compound were holding its breath. Jiho's jaw locked as he made a quick decision. 5 seconds, he whispered tightly. Then we leave. Yura stepped forward, tears falling freely now. She reached out, stopping inches from Amara, afraid to touch her without permission. My sweet girl. Her voice broke. I searched for you for years. I never stopped. I prayed every night that you were alive. Amara's lips trembled. Why didn't you come back? I couldn't. Yura's shoulders shook. When they trafficked me out of Nigeria, they took my passport, my name, my freedom. I was sold, beaten, forced to work. She wiped her eyes. I escaped, ended up in Korea. But by then I had nothing. I didn't even know your father had died until Ryusok told me. Her body crumpled with grief. I wasn't strong enough to come for you. Amara's heart cracked open. Her legs moved before her mind could catch up. She stepped forward and threw her arms around the woman who had only lived in her memories. Mom, she choked out. Yura sobbed into her shoulder. My baby, my precious girl. Jiho looked away, jaw tight, giving them a few seconds. But the moment shattered with the sound of gunfire echoing down the hallway. Jiho snapped his gun up instantly. We're out of time. What's happening? Amara gasped. Everything, Jiho answered. Nari's forces breached the outer wall. They're coming for both of you. Yura grabbed Amara's hands. Ryusok warned me this might happen. He said if a day came when the compound was under attack, I was to stay with you no matter what. He told you that? Amara whispered, stunned. Yura nodded. He said you were the only innocents he'd ever failed to protect, and he wouldn't fail again. Amara's throat tightened. She had never realized how deeply Ryusok had intertwined himself into her life, even before she understood what he felt for her. Jiho grabbed Amara's arm. We need to move. The three of them rushed down the corridor. Lights flickered overhead. Distant explosions shook the foundations. Shouts echoed from every direction. Jiho led them through a hidden passage that twisted behind the main walls of the compound. It was narrow, dark, and silent except for their frantic breathing. Amara clung to her mother's hand. Yura held her so tightly Amara felt the tremor in her grip. Where is Ryusok? Amara gasped. Is he alive? Jiho's silence spoke louder than words. Jiho, please, tell me. He exhaled sharply. When the negotiation went wrong, Nari tried to kill him. He escaped, but he hasn't checked in. We don't know where he is. Amara stumbled. He's alone? He's never alone, Jiho muttered. He's Ryusok. But the uncertainty in his voice terrified her. They reached the end of the passage. Jiho cracked the door open an inch and cursed. The corridor outside was filled with smoke. Shadows moved between the flickering lights. Gunfire rattled through the air. "They're here," Jiho whispered. "Both sides. It's chaos." A deep boom shook the ground again. "Jiho!" Yura whispered. "We can't stay here." "I know." Jiho gritted his teeth. "We're getting out." He opened the door fully, guns raised. He scanned the hallway, then motioned for them to follow. They moved quickly, staying close to the walls. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. The smoke made her eyes sting, but adrenaline kept her legs moving. A loud clang sounded behind them. Amara flinched. A masked figure stepped out of the smoke, gun aimed. "Down!" Jiho shoved both Amara and Yura to the ground as bullets tore through the wall, inches above their heads. Yura screamed. Amara grabbed her mother, shielding her as Jiho fired back, striking the intruder. But more shadows moved through the smoke. 3, 4, 5. "We're surrounded," Jiho whispered, bracing his gun. Amara's chest tightened. They were going to die here. After everything, after finding her mother, this was how it would end? Jiho aimed again. Before he could fire, a shot rang out from behind the attackers. One of them dropped. Then another, then another. The smoke parted. Ryusok stepped through it, coat torn, shirt bloodied, eyes blazing with fury. He looked like he had fought the entire night, and won. Amara's breath broke into a sob. "Ryusok!" He didn't hesitate. He fired without looking, killing the last attacker, then ran toward her, grabbing her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "No, are you?" He ignored the question, pulling her into his chest. She felt him shaking, just slightly, but enough to know he'd come close to losing everything. "You scared me," he murmured hoarsely. "Don't ever do that again." Yura watched them silently, recognition filling her eyes. "You care for my daughter." Ryusok turned, met her gaze, and bowed his head, not in submission, but in apology. "I promised I'd protect her," he said quietly. "I meant it." Before Yura could respond, another explosion shook the building. Jiho shouted, "We need to fall back." Ryusok grabbed Amara's hand. "Stay close to me, both of you." "Where are we going?" Yura cried. "To the safe wing," Jiho said. "It's reinforced." "No," Ryusok said sharply. "It's compromised. The only safe place is the vault floor." Jiho's eyes widened. "You're opening the vault? Boss, if you do that, your enemies will know we're cornered." Ryusok's gaze hardened. "Let them know." He turned to Amara. "I won't let anyone touch you. Either of you." Amara felt a shiver run through her, not from fear, but from the certainty in his voice. He squeezed her hand. "And if you're listening to this story, subscribe, because everything from here changes fast." He pulled them into the smoke as the compound descended into chaos. The vault floor was deeper than any part of the compound Amara had seen. Cold metal walls, reinforced doors, a long, echoing hallway lit by red. Emergency lights that gave everything a sense of desperation. Ryusok moved first, weapon drawn, guiding them toward the last steel door at the end of the corridor. Jiho covered the rear, firing warning shots into the smoke behind them as they ran. Yura stumbled once, nearly falling, but Amara caught her. Ryusok immediately placed himself at Yura's side, steadying her with surprising gentleness before hurrying them forward again. "Almost there," he muttered. "Keep going." The hallway shook as another explosion reverberated through the compound. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The lights flickered. "Ryusok!" Jiho yelled. "We lose this floor. We lose everything." Ryusok didn't stop. "Then we don't lose it." He reached the vault door, slammed a hand against the biometric panel, and waited as it scanned his palm. The steel locks clicked open with a heavy groan, and he ushered Amara and Yura inside first. The vault wasn't filled with cash or gold. It was an emergency bunker, a thick room reinforced from top to bottom, lined with supplies, medical kits, water, radios, and bulletproof glass that looked out toward the corridor. Ryusok and Jiho entered last. Ryusok slammed the door shut, and the final lock sealed them inside. Jiho pressed his ear to the door, listening. "They're regrouping." Amara's heartbeat thundered in her chest. Her palms were slick with sweat, her eyes burning from smoke, her legs shaking. But Ryusok turned to face her, expression fierce and determined. "You're safe," he said, voice low. Amara shook her head. "We're trapped." "Trapped," he corrected, "but alive." She stepped toward him, grabbing his coat. "Ryusok, you're hurt." Blood soaked through the fabric of his sleeve and ribs. He didn't seem to notice. "It's nothing," he muttered. "It's not nothing." She pressed her hands against the wound. "You need treatment." "I need you safe first." His words stole her breath. Again. Jiho ransacked the medical kit and tossed it to her before returning to the door. "They'll try to cut through the outer lock next." Amara pressed gauze to Ryusuk's side. He stiffened but didn't pull away. His breathing was shallow, but his eyes stayed fixed on her. "You shouldn't have come for me," she whispered. "You could have died. I'd die anyway if something happened to you." Her hands froze. Yura watched silently, her eyes flicking between them like she was seeing a part of the story she hadn't known existed. "You care for her," Yura said softly. Ryusok didn't answer at first. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "I made a choice the moment she fell in front of me," he said. "I didn't realize it then, but I do now." Amara's heart pounded painfully. Jiho shifted at the door. "They're cutting the lock." The sound started as a faint hiss, then grew louder, metal screaming, as a blowtorch melted the outer hinges. Shadows moved beyond the glass. Voices barked orders. "We're not making it out of here," Amara whispered. Ryusok stepped toward her, gripping her shoulders firmly. "Look at me." She forced herself to meet his gaze. "You're going to live," he said. "If they break in, you stay behind me. You don't run to Jiho. You don't run to the exit. You stay with me." Tears blurred her vision. "Why me? Why do you keep choosing me?" He touched her face, thumb brushing gently against her cheek. "Because you walked into my world by accident and became the only thing in it that feels right." Her breath hitched. Ryusok. His eyes burned with something deeper than she'd ever seen in him. Tenderness, desperation, longing. But before he could say anything more, Yura spoke. "I know why Nari wants her." Both Ryusok and Amara turned sharply. "What?" Ryusok demanded. Yura swallowed. Amara's father didn't die in the accident he was reported dead in. He was murdered. Murdered on Nari's orders. Silence slammed into the room. Amara's knees weakened. "My father? No, that can't—" "He worked for Nari without knowing it," Yura said, voice trembling. "He was moving money for what he believed was a businesswoman. When he discovered it was a criminal network, he tried to pull out. They made an example of him." Ryusok's jaw clenched so hard the muscles trembled. "And you never said this before?" "I didn't know until recently," Yura whispered. "Nari's men bragged about it when I was still trapped in her network. And she wants Amara now because she believes the daughter of the man she killed will be her downfall." Amara staggered back. Her heart pounded so violently it hurt. The pain of her father's death, something she'd never fully healed from, came crashing back in jagged pieces. "She killed my father," Amara whispered. "She killed him because he tried to escape her." Ryusok stepped close, catching her before she fell. "You're not alone in this." The metal groan at the door grew louder. Sparks rained against the glass. Shouts echoed. "She's coming," Jiho said. "She's close." Ryusok pulled Amara against him protectively. "Then let her." His tone was terrifyingly calm. Amara shook her head, gripping his shirt. "You can't fight them all. Ryusok, please." He held her face gently with both hands. "If anything happens to me, you run with Jiho. You don't look back." "No," she whispered fiercely. "I'm not losing you." He leaned his forehead against hers, eyes closing. "I wasn't supposed to feel anything for you. I wasn't supposed to care. But you walked into my life and everything changed." She felt his breath shudder against her lips. Then the vault door exploded inward. Smoke filled the bunker. Nari's mercenaries burst through the opening, weapons raised. Jiho pushed Yura against the inner wall. "Stay behind me!" Ryusok pulled Amara behind him so fast she collided with his chest. He drew his gun and fired, each shot precise and deadly. Jiho returned fire. Bullets shattered lights, sending the bunker into strobing flashes of red and darkness. "Get behind the crates!" Ryusok yelled. Amara and Yura ducked, covering their heads. Two attackers lunged at Ryusok. He fought hand to hand, moving with brutal efficiency despite his injuries. Blood splattered. Grunts echoed. Another shot rang out, and Jiho fell to one knee, clutching his shoulder. "Jiho!" Amara cried. "I'm fine!" he growled, firing again. Nari herself stepped through the smoke now, elegant, composed, a cruel smile turning her lips. "So this is the girl," she said, "the little inconvenience who stole your attention." Ryusok aimed his gun at her heart. "Last chance, walk away." Nari raised her brow. "Or what? You'll kill me in front of her? The girl whose father I sent to the grave?" Amara shook with rage. "You murdered him." Nari's smile widened. "And now you'll join him." She raised her gun toward Amara. "No!" Ryusok roared. He stepped in front of her, blocking the shot. The gun fired. Time froze. Amara screamed, reaching for him, but the bullet never reached Ryusok. Jiho had thrown himself between them, taking the shot to his side. He collapsed, gasping. Ryusok's rage erupted. He lunged at Nari, tackling her to the ground as their weapons clattered away. They fought with raw violence, punches, elbows, shattered glass. Nari fought like a demon, but Ryusok fought like a man with something to live for. He pinned her, grabbing a shard of glass. "This is for her father," he hissed, raising it. But he didn't strike. He froze. Amara watching him, eyes wide, trembling, silently pleading for him not to cross a line he couldn't return from. He let the shard fall. Instead, he grabbed Nari by the collar and slammed her into unconsciousness. Sirens echoed outside the bunker. Reinforcements. Ryusok turned toward Amara, chest heaving, blood on his hands, smoke in the air. "You're safe," he whispered, collapsing to his knees. "It's over." Amara ran to him, gripping his face. "Ryusok, stay with me. Stay with me, please." He leaned into her touch, blood dripping down his arm, eyes softening. "Amara, I love..." His body swayed and he passed out in her arms before he could finish the sentence. Amara held him tightly, screaming for help as the smoke thinned and armed reinforcements poured into the vault. Yura knelt beside her daughter, whispering prayers. Jiho struggled to stand, clutching his wound. "He'll live!" Amara cried, holding Ryuseok's unconscious form. "He has to." Because she finally knew. She loved him too. And if you're listening to this story, Amara whispered through tears, "Subscribe. The next chapter is the beginning of everything." The bunker doors sealed, the chaos faded, and their world was changed forever.